أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Dear viewers, thank you for tuning in once again into our weekly show 14 Divine Guides, the show that looks at the lives of the 14 infallibles and tries to take lessons from their lives. And inshallah, during these shows we'll try and look at a brief look at the life of these infallibles, and not only take lessons that will benefit us in this world, but inshallah will benefit us in the next world. Alhamdulillah, we are delighted and honored to be joined by His Eminence Sayyid Mahdi al-Qazwini, who is studying at the moment in the Hawza of Qum, and inshallah for the next two shows we will benefit from his knowledge on the life of the 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha. On behalf of the viewers and myself, I welcome Sayyid Mahdi. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Sayyidina, for joining us, inshallah, and inshallah we can benefit from your knowledge about this great Imam who is buried also in Mashhad, and inshallah you have the honor of visiting him when you can, inshallah.
Allah bless you, inshallah.
Before we look at the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha, if we can try and look at his parents, who was his father and who was the Imam's mother?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal-mursaleen, habibi ilahi al-alameen, Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad, wa ala ali baytihi al-tayyibin al-tahirin. The 8th Imam, al-Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, is the son of the 7th Imam, al-Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhem alayhi salam. Of course, when introducing any member of the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, we cannot help but mention first and foremost their lineage going back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The Imam, as I mentioned, the son of the 7th Imam, al-Imam Musa al-Kadhem, who for years suffered much persecution and oppression from the government of Harun al-Abbasi, a man who was known for his humility, a man who was known for his asceticism, a man who was known for his worship. And without a doubt, these great attributes that the 7th Imam had reflected in his dear son, al-Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha alayhi salam. And as inshallah we will point out, the Imam, the 8th Imam, even though he reached the highest ranks in society, being appointed as the heir to the throne, at that same time he managed to preserve his spirituality, his humility, his humbleness, his acts of devotion and his acts of worship. And of course this reflected through his character, and not only through his character but those who were around him, they testified to his this fact. This was one of the greatest attributes which he inherited from his father, al-Imam Musa al-Kadhem alayhi salam. His mother, according to tradition, historians have differed in what her name was. Some say, most popularly, they say her name was Tuktem. Other historians mention other names for her. And according to popular tradition, she was a servant of the mother of the 7th Imam, Hamida. And she was originally from the area today known as Al-Maghrib, Morocco. And according to popular hadith, she was purchased by the 7th Imam, and the Imam said that she would bear a child who would walk in the footsteps of his grandparents. A woman also whose humility reflected the humility of the 7th Imam, Al-Imam Musa al-Kadhem alayhi salam. So from the beginning, the 8th Imam was raised in an environment of devotion and of humility and of zuhud, asceticism. This is a brief introduction to who his parents were.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. If we can look at the birth of the Imam and the naming of the Imam, of course we know the naming of all Imams came to us from Rasulullah, from Jibreel, from Allah. But with Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, we noticed that he is sort of the first, I think, Imam to have the name Ali after the commander of the faithful.
Yes.
Is there a particular reason for this name?
Of course, after Ali ibn al-Hussein as well.
Of course, Sajjad, of course.
Who was also known by different names. Because according to belief, Imam Hussein alayhi salam named all of his sons Ali. So, but in that regard, yes, there is a hadith which states Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, the 5th Imam, says that one of my grandchildren who shall be born of Musa al-Kadhem alayhi salam, I command you to name him Ali, and he will be referred to as Alim al-Muhammad, the scholar of al-Muhammad, and inshallah we'll get to why he was also granted that name as well. But yes, of course, it was a command by the Imams of Ahlulbayt who came before, long before the 7th Imam, Imam al-Kadhem alayhi salam.
Inshallah, we'll try and look at, as you mentioned, why he was known as Alim al-Muhammad. But of course, Al-Ridha is the title given to Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, salamullahi alayh. What does this mean, this title? And did he have any other titles or any other kunyas that he was known for?
Of course, he had many different kunyas, just as the Imams which came before him. Al-Ridha, the word Ridha in the Arabic language refers to content or satisfaction or gratification. One day, the 9th Imam, Al-Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, was asked by al-Bazanti, which was one of the companions of the 8th and 9th Imams. He says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, why did your father have this nickname, Al-Ridha? So the Imam replies to him, he says that because Allah was satisfied with him and Rasulullah was also satisfied with him. And this is why he received the name Al-Ridha, content or satisfaction, he who is satisfied with. So Al-Bazanti says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, is this not the case for all the Imams of Ahlul Bayt? Why is he singled out? So the Imam continues. He says, not only were Allah and His prophets satisfied with him, but his followers were satisfied with him, and even his enemies were satisfied with him. Even those who did not like him, they wanted to be around him. People like Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi himself, and inshallah we'll get into how he was appointed. But this is one reason why he was referred to as Ridha, is because everybody was satisfied and content with him. Also, he was given other nicknames as well. I believe Az-Zaki was one of his names, the one who is pure. But his most popular nickname was Al-Ridha. Now, some scholars dispute who named him Al-Ridha. Some would come to say that Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi named him Ridha. But in reality, long before Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi, his own father, Al-Imam Musa al-Kadhem alayhi salam, in many hadith, when he refers to his son, he says, for instance, قُلْتُ لِلْرِضَى, I said to my son Al-Ridha. Or when he would call upon him, he would refer to him as Al-Ridha. Or when, in another example, a man comes to him, to the 7th Imam, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what do we do after your death? We followed you during your life, but what happens if, la samhallah, if God forbid you are martyred? Who do we follow? He says, follow in the footsteps of your brother, akhukum, your brother Al-Ridha. So this title came directly from his own father, Imam Musa al-Kadhem.
We understand that, of course, the Imam did not spend a lot of time with his father because the last 15, 17, or
Yes.
narrations, some 13, some more. The Imam Musa al-Kadhem was in prison. How did this affect maybe the upbringing of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha? And at what age, how many years did he live with his father before he was imprisoned? And was there any contact between like Imam al-Kadhem
Yes.
and Imam Ridha? Because we do know that an Imam has to be buried by another Imam. So the Imam was present at his father's burial. But was there any contact, and was he receiving any contact with his father?
Remember during the time of al-Imam al-Kadhem alayhi salam, I mean, comparing with the Imams that came before him and after him, was a time of great oppression. So as you mentioned, he was placed in jail, first in Medina by Harun, and then he was taken towards Iraq, and in the end he was placed in the jail of Sindi ibn Shahik. And this is where he was faced with torture and torment, and eventually this is where he attained martyrdom. Although the followers of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam and even his family members did not have direct access to him, however, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there were some points of contact between the followers of Ahlul Bayt and between their Imam, the seventh Imam, al-Imam al-Kadhem alayhi salam. And the Imam, whenever he had a chance to contact, I mean, it was always short. It was always through a short letter or a short saying. Sometimes the saying would consist of one word or one letter, but the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the students of the Imam alayhi salam, were smart enough to realize what the Imam would mean even when he would only say one letter or one word. Of course, I mean, as Zainab alayhi salam said in front of Yazid that, you know, you can play your games and you can try to fight us as much as you want, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end will keep our message alive. And this is how the message was kept alive, through short points of contact. And of course, when the Imam was first born, remember the training of the Imam of Ahlul Bayt begins before he is born. And as soon as he is born and when he is a child and as he is growing up, he is taught to be an Imam. So that time that the eighth Imam spent with his father before jail, we can say that was more than sufficient. It was more than enough. Plus the random points of contact that would take place while the Imam was imprisoned.
When we look at the biography of when we looked at the biography of Imam Sadiq salamullahi alayhi, we noticed there was some confusion within who was appointed after Imam Sadiq.
Yes.
And we noticed some followed a different path, and this confusion, from my understanding, continued after Imam al-Sadiq, where it wasn't so much present before. For example, during the time of Imam al-Hussein, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, even up until Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, there was always the next Imam would be appointed.
Yes.
But it started getting more difficult because, from my understanding, again, I noticed that because the Imams were under so much oppression, they wouldn't sort of declare who was the next Imam in front of their followers, only a selected few. Is this the matter with Imam al-Kadhem? Is this the same case, or was Imam Ridha declared as the next Imam after Imam al-Kadhem, or was there confusion about?
First of all, it's important to note the following, that even before the time of al-Imam al-Baqir, there were some who would follow other Imams of Ahlul Bayt. That's why we have sects who, after Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they didn't go to the fourth Imam, al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin. They went to Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, who was his half-brother. What was their reasoning? Well, one of their reasons was that the Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he left to Karbala, he had written a will, a guide, basically, instructing his half-brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, which was a very good man, a very righteous man, on what to do after his martyrdom. So these little instances of confusion did exist. However, it became more complicated, as you mentioned, during the time of the 6th Imam and the 7th Imam and the 8th Imam for many reasons. Number one, as you mentioned, there was oppression. It was not easy for the Imam to say that this is the Imam after me. Why? The Imam wanted to preserve his life. I mean, during the time of Banu Umayyah, and especially during the time of Banu al-Abbas, who rose to power during the time of the 6th Imam, al-Imam al-Sadiq, I mean, the governments had spies. They had people watching the Imams all the time. If they noticed some sort of signal, I mean, they wanted to extinguish the legacy of the Imams of Ahlulbayt. So if they noticed the slightest signal, they would then keep their eye on whoever was to be appointed the Imam after his martyrdom. And then there are different factors. Before I go to that, I'll mention after the time of al-Imam al-Sadiq, a lot of confusion took place. Some people went and followed his son Abdullah al-Aftah. Some people went and followed his son Ismail, and the Ismaili sect which exists today goes back to Ismail, the son of the 6th Imam. When the time of the 7th Imam came, the time of the 8th Imam came, there was even more confusion because there were more factors in the equation, such as financial matters. One of the companions of the 7th Imam, al-Imam al-Kadhem alayhi salam, by the name of Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ini. This man was a companion of the 7th Imam, and not only was he a companion, but he was a representative. So in financial matters, when people would come and they would pay their khums, for instance, they would pay it to this man, and the Imam would keep it with him because he was trusted. So what happened was, after the martyrdom of the 7th Imam, well, these funds, they have to be transferred to the Imam which comes after him, and this is where the confusion took place, and this is where the conflict took place. I mean, it's sad to see this because Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ini was a very trusted companion, and that's why even today, when scholars of hadith try to classify the companions of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, to classify whether they are trustworthy sources or not, they will accept the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Hamza during the time of the 7th Imam, but when it comes to the time of the 8th Imam, they they back off because of this conflict which actually took place. And then after him, because of that, there was a sect established known as al-Waqifiyya, the Waqifites. Waqif means to stop. And they stopped following the Imams because of this very reason. And also, of course, not to mention, there was fear of the life of, I mean, imagine if the 7th Imam was placed in prison for so long and tortured and then finally given poison. I mean, what would happen to the Imams after him? But alhamdulillah, history did the opposite. The time of the 8th Imam was a time of blessing for Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. Sadly, we've come to the end of the first part. Inshallah, when we come back for the second part, we can look at that time, look at the ruling caliph, the people at the time, and find out what was happening during, just before the martyrdom of Imam al-Kadhem, and then after the imamate of Imam Ridha, salamullahi alayhi. But we have come to the end of the first part. Inshallah, we will be going for a short break. Please stay tuned. Inshallah, when we come back, we will continue our discussion with Sayyid Mahdi al-Qazwini. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to 14 Divine Guides, the show that looks at the biographies and lives of the 14 infallibles and tries to take lessons for us. If you have missed any of our previous episodes, you can view them on demand on our website ahlulbayt.tv/on demand. The show is 14 Divine Guides, and in any previous episodes that we have done, you can see whenever you want. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed to be joined by His Eminence Sayyid Mahdi al-Qazwini, looking at the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. Sayyidina, before the break we looked at a brief look at the life of Imam al-Kadhem and the birth of Imam Ridha salamullahi alayh. Let's look at the time the Imam lived in, because I feel that's very important. We noticed during the time of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Ja'far al-Sadiq, there's a fight for power. Bani Abbas take over the Khilafat, and the time is sort of they're at ease, where Imam builds this university where some narrations say that he has 4,000 students studying the knowledge of the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. It's much more different under Harun al-Rashid, where he actually imprisons Imam Musa al-Kadhem, and it's much more difficult. If we can try and compare Harun al-Rashid to al-Amin and then to al-Ma'mun, and what was the time like during the time of maybe the end of the life of Imam al-Kadhem, the start of the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha?
Ahsantum. You mentioned a very good point. It's always, to understand more about the lives of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, it's always necessary to understand the political situation at the time. The Umayyads, Banu Umayyah, their politics towards Ahlul Bayt, I mean, only if you look at Karbala and what happened after Karbala, you would understand a lot about their mentality towards Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They were their opponents, obviously, and the way they attacked them was direct. They would directly attack the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. They would poison them, they would kill them, they would abuse their followers, they would chase their followers. I mean, how many companions do we have of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt who were chased to all corners of the empire just because they were the companions of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They established their Khilafah in Damascus, and rarely did they visit Mecca and Medina or other parts of the empire. I mean, their business was mainly in Damascus, but they controlled, the entire Islamic empire. They never requested the Imams during that time to come and live in Damascus with them. That's the last thing that they wanted to happen. And their animosity for the Imams of Ahlul Bayt was clear. However, when it became the time for Banu al-Abbas could not do the same, because number one, they were the cousins of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Their grandfather, Abdullah ibn Abbas, was the first cousin of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and in fact he was one of his closest companions. So what did they try to do? They also had enmity for their cousins. However, they would try to bring them close to them, and they would try to undermine them. So, for instance, the first Khalifa, Abbasi Khalifa, Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah al-Dawaniqi, when they rose and when they had their revolt, their revolution, they did so, number one, under the name of Ahlul Bayt, that they were seeking revenge for what happened in Karbala, and everything which followed after Karbala, the oppression of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And that's why the revolution took place on the 10th of Muharram, and they were all wearing black, and they had black flags, and people thought that these were the people who would avenge the death of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Little did they know that they had their own personal gain, and that became manifest after us during the time of al-Mansur, who established Baghdad as his Khilafah. And at that time, they did not want any troubles. The Abbasis did not want any troubles. They did not want to commit the same mistakes as Banu Umayyah by marginalizing and attacking Ahlul Bayt, because they know that they had followers. In the same way that they revolted against Banu Umayyah, well, people would revolt against them if they were to attack. So that period was a period of relative ease for the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and that's why the sixth Imam, who witnessed this transition of power from Banu Umayyah to Banu al-Abbas, was given the opportunity to establish, as you mentioned, the university where he had thousands of students, and the knowledge of Ahlulbayt began to flourish and become popular among people. However, it became too popular. So after the time of Al-Mansur, of course after Al-Mansur came his son Al-Mahdi al-Abbasi, who began to marginalize Ahlulbayt again, who was very oppressive and very brutal towards Ahlulbayt. It is said at that time, I mean, they basically revived the sunnah of Banu Umayyah in marginalizing the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and it got worse during the time of Harun al-Abbasi. Now, I came across a narration which was very interesting. It says that Harun one day went to visit, of course with his group of people, his ministers and what have you. They went to visit the grave of Rasulullah in Medina, and who was with him? The seventh Imam, Imam al-Kadhem. He would force him, unlike Banu Umayyah who wanted nothing to do with the Imams. No, these people, Banu al-Abbas, when they would go on official visits, they would take the Imams with them because, you know, they were their cousins. It was part of their agenda to establish a relationship with the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, so that in turn the Imams of Ahlul Bayt can legitimize their leadership. Of course, that never happened. So they went to visit the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Harun says, he says, "Assalamu alayka yabna al-am," peace be upon you, saying to Rasulullah, "O cousin," because they were cousins of the Prophet. And Imam Musa al-Kadhem says, "Assalamu alayka ya abatah," peace be upon you, O father. So a little, skirmish takes place in, between them. So the Imam, what was he trying to? Of course, the Imam wasn't trying to deceive anyone. He was not trying to lie. He was stating the fact that if you are the cousin of Rasulullah and you are honored to be his cousin, and your khilafah is based on the fact that you are his cousin, well, I am his son, I am his descendant. So the Imam tells him, "Ya Harun, I will prove to you that I am closer to Rasulullah than you." He says, if I was to have a daughter right now, the Imam says, if I had a daughter right now and Rasulullah were alive, would he be able to marry my daughter? He says, no. But he says he would be able to marry your daughter, yes, because they're cousins. He says, if Rasulullah were alive right now and his wives were there, would I be able to enter and see them without their hijab? Harun says, yes. He says, would you be able to do the same, Ya Harun? He says, no, I would not be able to. The hadith mentions at this point, this is when Harun realized that his position was under threat, because the people around, they said, yeah, I mean, this makes sense. This makes total sense. The Imam is definitely closer to Rasulullah than Harun. And this is when he placed him in prison. Another hadith which I also came across was, it says that when Harun, after the long dispute which took place over the ownership of the land of Fadak. Remember, Fadak was not just a story which ended. It was continued after the martyrdom of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. The Umayyads, for a while, they took it for themselves. Uthman, Muawiyah, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, until the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, where he gave it back to the sons of Fatima alayhi salam. And then after him, it was taken and given and taken. I mean, it was something of significance. So Al-Imam al-Kadhem, Harun al-Rashid says to Al-Imam al-Kadhem, Ibn Rasulullah, solve this conflict for us. Draw out the borders of Fadak, so finally we can solve this conflict. So the Imam draws him borders. He says it begins in Aden, which is in Yemen, and it goes to Bahrain, to Samarkand, and to North Africa. So the Imam, the Khalifa says to him, then what stays for us? There will be nothing left for us. So the Imam tells him, I knew that you would refuse. Before you insisted, I knew that you would refuse. And then the hadith says that this is when the Khalifa decided to place him in prison. So it was marginalization after realizing that their rule was shaky and it was illegitimate. And people began to realize that. Then came the time of his sons, Al-Amin and Al-Ma'mun. Now, The three khulafa which came after Harun were Al-Amin, Al-Ma'mun, Al-Mu'tasim, three brothers. Al-Amin was from an Arab mother, Al-Ma'mun from a Persian mother, and Al-Mu'tasim from a Turkish mother. The first thing that happened was the conflict between Al-Amin and Al-Ma'mun. And Al-Imam Ridha alayhi salam, he predicted this. He said, Abdullah will kill Muhammad. Abdullah was Ma'mun and Muhammad was Amin. Al-Amin he had no interest in Islam. He had no interest in anything. All he cared about was his belly and his private parts. He was a man who was known for his love of women and alcohol and food. And this is why Al-Ma'mun, who was much more conscious than him and more religious, apparently more religious than him, he sought to take away the Khilafah from his brother. And so they laid siege on the city of Baghdad, which was the capital of the Islamic Empire. And for a few months they were pounding the city of Baghdad from outside, until finally they were able to enter, and they executed Al-Amin, and they brought the head of Al-Amin to his brother, Al-Ma'mun. And this is when finally he was satisfied, and basically the Khilafah came to him, and he established Khurasan as the capital of the Islamic Empire.
Ahsantum Sayyidina for that brief biography of those three Khulafa. As you mentioned, Al-Ma'mun now takes the capital of the Islamic State to Khurasan. My first question is, what's the particular reason for Al-Ma'mun doing this? And I did read a brief biography of Al-Ma'mun, and from my understanding, again, my limited understanding, I find that Al-Ma'mun, of all the Bani Abbas caliphs, was probably the cleverest, and very and everything he did, I think he thought about it 3 or 4 steps ahead of any other caliph.
No doubt.
So what was the reason for him taking the capital to Khurasan? And the second question is, what was the reason for taking Imam Ridha to Khurasan as well?
Number one, as I mentioned, Al-Ma'mun, his mother was Persian. So naturally, I mean, he would want to choose a place where he has supporters. His family were there, his uncles, his maternal uncles, his cousins, everyone who he knew would support him in his endeavor were all in Khurasan, what is today northeastern Iran, Mashhad. Perhaps he wanted one reason, I mean, besides what is stated, perhaps he wanted to get away from Baghdad at the time, because Baghdad, I mean, 3 months of siege, I mean, this doesn't look good on anybody's reputation. I mean, even if he was right in taking the Khilafah from his brother, what happened to the city of Baghdad, I mean, so much damage, so many people lost lives. So perhaps he wanted to kind of, how we say, clear the air at the time. So he wanted to leave that area. A lot of his brother's supporters and his father's supporters still remained in Baghdad. So he wanted to go somewhere which he can start a new beginning. And so he was comfortable with the area of Khurasan, somewhere where he knew he would be able to consolidate his power because of his blood relationship to them. So this is one reason why he chose Khurasan. And at the time there were many Muslims there, many followers of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam. It was known as a place of Islam where Islam and Shia Islam especially flourished. Because remember, Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, for instance, he sent his companions to all corners of the Islamic Empire. One of them was Khurasan. At that time, the boundary of the Islamic Empire was Khurasan and Samarkand and that area. So they were followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam at that time. Now, why did he choose to bring Al-Imam Ridha? Of course, this question opens a really big door in front of us. Most historians have stated that, of course, the reasoning behind that was entirely political. Number one, as I mentioned, the Khulafa of Banu al-Abbas, they like to keep an eye on the Imams. Khulafa of Banu Umayyah, they would stay in Damascus, they would let the Imams live in Medina, or, in the case of Imam Hussein, chase him out of Medina and out of Mecca. But during the time of Banu al-Abbas, things were different. They wanted to keep their eye on the Imams of Ahlulbayt. That's why al-Imam al-Kadhem was taken to Baghdad, where Harun can keep an eye on him. Al-Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha was taken to Khurasan, so the Khalifa could keep an eye on him. Likewise, when it came to the time of al-Imam al-Jawad and al-Imam al-Hadi wal-Askari, why were they taken to Samarra? Because Samarra at that time was the capital of the Khilafah. So they wanted to keep an eye on the Imams of Ahlulbayt. They knew the Imams of Ahlulbayt were very influential. And at that time, there were so many revolts going on. Pockets of revolts. And one way that they would be able to contain that and win the hearts of the people is if they were to contain Ahlul Bayt, if they were to keep a close eye on them. Their government was under constant threat. One threat was posed by a military commander known as Abu Saraya, and he was a battle-hardened veteran, and he sought to destabilize the government of Banu al-Abbas in its early stages. So one way that the Khalifa would be able to win popular support is by winning the support, or trying to win over the support of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So this is one reason why, or just a few reasons why Al-Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha alayhi salam was taken to Khurasan.
And of course he was taken from Medina to...
Yes, he was taken from Medina. And also he spent some time in Kufa and Basra as well. And this is where some of his debates, his very famous debates, took place.
Inshallah, we'll look at
inshallah,
those as well.
we'll point to that. Some of his debates which took place, some of them, of course, many of them took place in Khurasan itself when he was with Al-Ma'mun, but a lot of them also took place in Al-Basra and Kufa.
Was Kufa al-Basra his choice to travel to, or again was this something that was sort of imposed on him?
From what I understand, I mean, ultimately it was requested of him that he be brought to Khurasan. However, the Imam, he saw it important that he first go to Basra and Kufa, because remember, Kufa was, there were many followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and even in Basra as well, many of the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they came from Kufa and they came from Basra, so there was a strong presence for the Shia. So the Imam, one of the things which he sought to do in order to further consolidate his imamah was first to visit the cities of Kufa and Basra and to let the people know that I am the Imam after my father. So in order to gain support, he visited the cities of Kufa and Basra.
Thank you very much, Sayyidina. We have again come to the end of this part, inshallah. When we come back after the break, inshallah, we will discuss the qualities of the Holy Imam Salamullahi alayh, and also maybe try and look at some of his debates and what others at the time thought of him and what others say of him, because we, as some narrations have pointed out, Al-Ma'mun, for example, gave him the title Al-Ridha. That's just some narrators. Others say, of course, it was his father or his grandfather from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we'll also look at the companions of the Imam in our last and final part. See you after this short break. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to 14 Divine Guides, the show that looks at the lives of the 14 infallibles. In our final part, looking at the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha, the 8th Imam, with his eminent Sayyid Mahdi al-Qazwini. As mentioned, as mentioned in previous episodes, we are trying to take a glance, a brief look at the lives of these Imams for us, because if we were to do endless episodes on the Imams, they would not do justice to the qualities and the characteristics of these holy Imams. And inshallah, this gives our viewers the chance to learn about these Imams and do further reading, inshallah, into the lives of the Imams. As mentioned in previous episodes, also there are books in English on the biographies of the Imam. Inshallah, you can try and do extra reading on the lives of the Imams to inshallah better ourselves, inshallah. Sayyidina, as we mentioned, we'll try and look at the qualities of the Imam, the characteristics of the Imam. We noticed a lot of these qualities are present in all the Imams. As you mentioned, they are all al-Ridha. They are all, for example, al-Kadhem. They are all the best of worshippers. They are all the best in their supplication, in their worship, in their ibadah. But what are the main characteristics we see from Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha as narrated to us?
Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, of course, walking in the footsteps of his grandfather, first and foremost, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Among his many attributes was his kind-heartedness towards those who were less fortunate, especially people of the lower class, servants at the time. Whenever the Imam was able to, he would purchase servants and he would let them free. The Imam never refused a request when requested by any person, a layman or anyone. A famous story is usually narrated about the Imam, that one day he entered a public bathhouse, which was prevalent at the time. Before people had baths in their homes, they would go to a public bathhouse in order to purify themselves. So the Imam walked in and there was a soldier. So this soldier heard somebody walking in, so he told him, "Ya hada, pour water over my head." So the Imam, without saying anything, he took the water and he poured it over the head of this soldier. As he was doing so, another man walked in. So the other man, the second one, he recognized the Imam. He said, "Wayhak," to the first one. "What are you doing? Do you not know that this is the son of Rasulullah?" So the first one turned around and he was surprised. He was shocked. So he says, "Ya ibn Rasulullah, why did you obey my command? You are the son of Rasulullah. Why are you pouring water over my head? I should be serving you." So the Imam smiles to him. He says, "Why would you want to prohibit me from thawab? There is reward. I am helping out another believer for the sake of Allah. Doesn't matter whether I am the son of Rasulullah or I am not the son of Rasulullah. Reward is reward, and reward is always requested. It is always good." So he was very humble in this regard. He would never refuse a request. Even those who would serve his family in the home, he would always sit with them. He would always have food with them. He would sit on the same table. What they were eating, he would also eat. He never differed, even in his clothes, even in his style of dress, even in his mannerisms. He was extremely humble, extremely friendly, extremely approachable. And this is why, this contributed to his name, Al-Ridha, those who everyone was satisfied with, his friends, his followers, and even his enemies.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina. Inshallah, we can try and reach that kindness to others,
Yes.
as shown by the Imam Salamullahi alayhi. We noticed that the Imam lives in a time where there's a lot of debates taking place, whether it's with Catholics, atheists, disbelievers, even Muslims from other schools of thought. And the Imam takes part in a lot of these debates before reaching Khurasan, and even after reaching Khurasan. Sometimes Al-Ma'mun puts him under the test, or Al-Ma'mun sometimes even uses the Imam to show his power by saying, debate the heir to my Khilafat. So he shows off that he has Imam Ridha on his side. If we could try and look at a few of these debates And of course, the Imam is always successful in these debates.
Yes. As we mentioned earlier, the Khulafa, especially al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi, extremely clever and resourceful in this regard. They sought the knowledge, to make use of the knowledge of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt in order to consolidate their own positions. At the same time, one thing that they tried to do was they tried to also undermine the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So not only would he try to show the knowledge, he would also try to reveal a weakness within the Imam. And that's why historians narrate that al-Ma'mun would pay scholars in order to come and debate the Imam, so that maybe they can win the Imam in an argument. So, I mean, it played on both, on both the strength of the Imam and what they thought would be the weakness of the Imam. Of course, the Imam always revealed his strength in debates, and the Imam never did it to show off. The Imam has a responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when it came to his debates in Kufa and in Basra, after the martyrdom of his father, Imam al-Kadhem in Baghdad, and before he went to Khurasan, he spent some time in Kufa and Basra. It wasn't to show off. Some people were asking, well, are you truly the heir to the Imamah? And he would say, ask me. So they would bring people who would ask him in different languages. A man narrates a hadith. He says, I came from India, from Hind, and I wanted to speak to the Imam, but I did not know in what language to speak to him because he did not speak Arabic. So the Imam tells him, speak in your language. He was from an area which is known as Sindh. So he was speaking the Sindhi language. He says, I spoke in Sindhi to the Imam, and the Imam replied eloquently in my own language. Of course, people at the time, they knew that one of the attributes of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt was their ability to speak in different languages. Even old languages, Hebrew and Assyrian and Aramaic, as well as other languages, the language of the Romans, for instance, or Turkish, or Sindhi or Hindi at that time. Then we come to his debates, which took place mainly in Khurasan. And these were debates which were set up by al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi himself. And as we mentioned before, the Imam al-Ma'mun wanted to demonstrate the strength of the Imam, and hopefully he was looking to demonstrate a weakness which did not exist in the Imam. And these debates covered a wide array of subjects. Because remember, at that time, it wasn't only about, well, who is the rightful heir to the Prophet. It wasn't only about, okay, well, how should we pray? Should we pray with our hands up or our hands to the side? Or the laws of Hajj, for instance. It wasn't only about jurisprudence. People began debating in terms of theology. And this is why the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, not only did they raise companions who were knowledgeable in conventional types of Islamic knowledge, but also in philosophy. So much so that if a person came from Greece or from Rome, people who were, experts in philosophy, the companions of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt would be able to debate them. People such as Hisham ibn al-Hakam. Hisham ibn al-Hakam was a companion of the 7th Imam, Imam al-Kadhem alayhi salam. He was his representative, and he was an expert theologian. So people would come and instead of debating the Imams would request that Hisham debates them, because Hisham was just as strong and just as binding and just as convincing in his arguments. Of course, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt had taught him how to debate and how to argue. So going back to what I was saying, it covered a wide array of subjects. It covered a wide array of topics. Some were concerning history, some were concerning theology, some concerning jurisprudence. Just as an example, and I won't go too deep into the details, one famous debate which took place with the Imam was a debate which took place with a man named Imran al-Sabi'i. Imran al-Sabi'i was the leader of the Sabi'a, who were a religion which until today they exist in southern Iraq. And they are also mentioned in the Quran, the Sabi'a, a monotheistic religion. And this man had very legitimate, number one, legitimate questions. Some people would come and they would argue about useless things, you know. Some people would come and they had very legitimate, deep questions about theology, about the essence of Allah. What was Allah created from? Well, what did He create other things from? What is the boundary of His existence? What is the relationship between the Creator and the created? And he asks him in one sitting a series of about 16 questions, I believe. And the Imam answers with precision and with eloquence and with convincing arguments, so much so that in the end, Imran accepts Islam. And during the next debate, where the Imam has with another group of people, Imran begins to debate them. So, and this is what the Imams of Ahlulbayt would do. They would train their companions, you know, with the same convincing arguments that they have to use with other people who would come and debate. Likewise, there were debates regarding historical issues. I mean, one day the Imam was sitting with Al-Ma'mun and with some of the companions, so he posed the question. He said, "What do you know about the Prophet Dawood? What have you heard about the Prophet Dawood?" Now, just as a side note, remember at that time, and this happened much earlier, where people, they had heard the stories of the Jews, which were referred to as al-Isra'iliyat, fabricated stories which were created by rabbis and introduced into Islam as if they were the hadith of Rasulullah. I mean, Muawiyah did this for many years. Yes. He would not allow people to narrate the hadith of Rasulullah. Instead, he would bring storytellers who would tell fables, ridiculous fables, things that never existed, things that never happened. And so this became a part of the Sunnah. So what does this person say to the Imam? He says, "This is what we know of Nabiullah Dawood." And he begins to relay to him, you know, a story of how Dawood was, God forbid, attempted murder, and how he was responsible for the murder of one of his soldiers, and how he committed adultery with the wife of the soldier, and Sulaiman was born of that. The Prophet Sulaiman was born of that adultery. So it covered, his debates covered a wide array of topics, ranging from history to theology. For those who are interested, they are printed today in books. The best source for these debates, number one, there is the book Al-Ihtijaj by Shaykh al-Tabrasi. Number two, you have the book Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha, and other books of seerah which mention the seerah of the 8th Imam.
Ahsantum. Thank you very much, Sayyidina. I think, inshallah, in the next part we'll look at more details, the imamate of Ali ibn Musa Ridha salamullahi alayh, and how Al-Ma'mun put him as the heir to his khilafat, and in that way strengthened his own khilafat over the people.
Yes.
And gave sort of and then also we will try and discuss why the Imam accepted this to work under maybe a corrupt government. Inshallah, we can try and learn lessons from that. But I was hoping to ask about Ma'sooma Qum. She is known, Fatima, who is the sister of Imam Ridha, the daughter of Imam al-Kadhem. And maybe since we are looking at the 14 infallibles, we don't have space maybe for someone like Ma'sooma, other than maybe a show on her birth that we do. If we can try and in a few minutes summarize maybe how she ended up in Qom, what her attributes were, and what lessons we can take from her life.
As-Sayyida Fatima bint al-Imam al-Kadhem alayhi salam. This was the name that she was given at birth. The title al-Ma'sooma apparently it was created later on by those who lived in the city of Qum. They began to refer to her as al-Ma'suma, the infallible one, because of her traits, because of her outstanding traits. Sayyidah Fatima was, of course, after the martyrdom of her father, she sought to be in the company of her brother Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha alayhi salam when he was in Khurasan. And so on the way, remember at that time, the followers of Ahlulbayt and the families of Ahlulbayt were still being chased. Even though there was security, but it was relative, So it is said that she arrived in an area outside of what is the city of Qum today. She was intercepted by government forces, and she was forced to take refuge in the city of Qum, where at that time there were followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. I mean, even in the hadith of our seventh Imam, al-Imam al-Kadhem, he refers to Qum as being the Ish al-Muhammad, basically the nest of the family of Rasulullah, a place which would always provide a safe haven for Rasulullah. So she sought refuge there, and her residency there lasted for about 3 weeks. And she was very young at the time. And according to sources, she was given poison. And this is why she passed away. However, she had outstanding attributes, outstanding characteristics, and this is why she possessed the name Al-Ma'suma. Now, why it became a center of visitation and why it became established as the strongest Islamic seminary until today was, first of all, as I mentioned, Qum was always known as the nest of Al-Muhammad. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we read the Quran always tells us verses which say that those who migrate, perform hijrah in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after they have been persecuted, or they do so in order to seek a better life for themselves, and they are persecuted and they are martyred, we will bestow upon them grace. We will bestow upon them all forms of blessings. And so I believe this is one reason why today Sayyidah Fatima, when you visit her shrine, and for anyone who's visited her shrine, really feels protected, secure, blessed, karama from generosity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for her sacrifice. And she was very young. She was very young too, according to sources.
And was she killed during the poison during the time of the life of Imam Ridha, or was this after?
It was during his life, when she was going to Mashhad. Of course, her final destination was Mashhad, to be with her brother, but she never reached, so she passed away at that time. And the hadith which say basically the blessings that one receives by visiting her, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, who is her nephew, says, "Man zara ammati biqum wajabat lahu al-jannah." He who visits my aunt in Qum, the heaven shall become wajib upon him. Obligatory that he will enter the Jannah, enter the paradise.
I think you are blessed, Sayyidina, to be residing in the city of Qum, inshallah, having the honor of visiting, doing the ziyarah of Sayyidah Fatima Ma'suma. Inshallah, you can remember us in your du'as. We have sadly come to the end of tonight's show. Inshallah, we have tried and gained some lessons from the life of Ali ibn Musa Ridha, salamullahi alayh. Inshallah, in the next show we will continue this discussion into his holy life, and inshallah we will see you in the next show. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.